Welcome to a new episode of the Creative Industry Insight podcast. I'm your host, Bobby. Today, we welcome costume designer Alisa Swanson, who joins us to talk about their work on Scrubs The Revival. Allisa will talk us through creating the looks for the daydream sequences and the everyday scrubs worn by the cast. Please be warned there are heavy spoilers in this episode. Now let's jump into the conversation with Allisa. Hi Allisa, thank you for joining me today.
Thank you for having me. It's fun to be here.
We're here to talk about Scrubs, the revival, the reboot, the continuation, all the above.
All of the above.
That's come out recently. And how have you found the reception of the return of the show?
So far, I think it's been received really, really well. I've had so much response that's been positive on Instagram and Facebook and friends of mine who have seen it. And I know the critics seem to be pretty pleased with it. Every once in a while, you get one that's not, but when do you not?
Yeah, exactly. And maybe sometimes you might think as well as like they might have had a bad day. So maybe you can get, like let something slide. But I think I'm a little bit surprised because don't get by it, and a good surprise because sometimes when you hear about these reboots or revivals, you're kind of thinking, should we be doing this? Should they do this? Should they not do it? Has it been too much time, or has it been enough time for like the next generation who've grown up with it, who grew up? I mean, who've been watching like the reruns of Scrubs. So then people kind of get a new audience, and you're kind of thinking, oh, is it gonna work? And I have to say, I was really pleasantly surprised. It was like watching it, it was just such a, maybe it's also the fact that there's a lot of, maybe not depressing things on TV, but a lot of TV, because it's so high end now, it's kind of going to be a bit more, how can I say it, like dramatic and a lot more serious. This is just light-hearted and it's fun
It
and
is.
enjoyable.
I think it was actually really interesting when they first talked about reviving it, because so much of the stuff that was done on TV in the aughts is so not politically correct anymore. And the jokes that we got away with then are not things that we say out loud. So I myself was interested to see how they were going to keep the same funny, keep the same characters, and still hit it in a way that, our millennials and our Zennials are going to look at it and not be like, oh my God, this is so cringe. Because I'm sure some of them, if they rewatch some of the earlier ones, are like, I can't believe they said that on TV. But we did. So I was pleasantly surprised how they managed to tackle that and add in, like when when Todd makes some jokes and then adds on, "Ooh, with consent," to the end of it. So they addressed it. They kept it funny, but they elevated it to a level that all the audiences today can watch it and see where the humor came from, see that they're the same people, but hopefully they've all grown just like we have all grown in how we address these things nowadays.
I think it's some like I get things change completely in terms of like comedy, the social political landscape and all that jazz. And I kind of think like I know people get upset when they say what they've changed it because they can't accept this, they can't accept that, you can't say this, you can't say that. But then there's also like, or people are too sensitive. It's like, well, maybe it's just we've moved on. Things become slightly different. You take things into consideration, and it's the same with like. I bet if you talk to your parents who grew up in, my parents grew up 60s, 70s sort of time, and then you kind of talk to them about what they probably watched then or what was said then to like now, you just have to sort of accept that like things are just different. And I'm sure, do you know what? Their parents growing up and seeing kids who are hippies and stuff like that, they're all probably complaining and being like, you can't do stuff like that.
Yes. And I mean, that's the theory is, yes, we said all these things in the aughts. Looking back, should we have? Probably not. There is a reason why we don't make those jokes and those comments anymore, because they're not appropriate. And we keep hoping as a society we are growing and learning and moving ahead. Not always the case, but that's the general hope, right? Like we don't treat people now, at least we're trying not to treat people now the way certain people were treated in the 60s, because as a society, we have become smarter about it and opened our minds to uh, different people and where they come from, and the fact that, we're all equal in that somebody's brain doesn't work better than somebody else's, and it doesn't matter what color skin you have, and it doesn't matter what your sexual orientation is. And we've, grown and learned. So therefore we shouldn't be making jokes that we made in the early aughts at sometimes people's expense, because we have grown. That doesn't mean we can't still be funny, though. And I think Bill Lawrence and Asim and the writers of Scrubs have done a really good job of keeping the comedy and just keeping it so that it works with where we are sitting in a society now.
Yeah, 100%. And I feel like as well, I guess as a creator and probably actors as well, you've got your fingers on the pulse of what's going on, especially like Bill Lawrence with how much he's kind of doing of like stuff like Ted Lasso and Shrinking and this, and I'm sure there's probably other stuff that I've missed as well that he's working on. So he probably gets a good idea of like how to sort of communicate ideas and also probably accept people's ideas and branch out in what they're supposed to do.
Mm-hmm.
I just want to sort of go back to the beginning. How did the project come about and what made you want to take it on?
So I found out about it last summer. I was super excited to hear that it was coming here. And Sarah Chalk and I have known each other for a really long time. We actually went to modeling school together when we were like 10, 11, 12. And then we worked again together in the late 90s on one of her very early projects after Roseanne and one of my first films. And then, she went on to do Nothing Too Good for a Cowboy. And then she went on to do this. And then we reconnected on Firefly Lane in 2019-ish. And we did both seasons of those. So when it was starting to be talked about coming here, she was calling me going, oh my God, I've got to, I've got to talk to them about you. In the meantime, they had actually hired their production design manager that is from here. And he and I are really good friends. And he called me and he's like, I've got a great project. And it had been a while since I'd seen Scrubs. I had watched it on and off during the aughts. I was working in film at the time, so trying to watch it religiously was virtually impossible. But I went back and rewatched some of it, and I'm like, oh, this could be a lot of fun. It would be so nice to do something light and comedic and with a cast that already knows each other and loves each other and respects each other. So you've got that camaraderie already going into it. I thought it would be really a neat thing. I generally like to start projects as opposed to come into a project that's already going. But I felt because it was like a revival and there'd been such a break that would still work. And so once I had my first call actually with Randall and Jesse, it was such a fun call. And they're like, okay, so are you good with last minute stuff? And I'm like, last minute's my middle name. I can do that. And they're like, okay, great. Because a lot of the scripts, I mean, we shoot these episodes in 5 days. And the script, the next one we're prepping while we're shooting. So we only have 5 days to prep. And sometimes the script will change halfway through that 5-day prep period because they've come up with a new idea or they want to change something or an actor is not available. There's many reasons. So being able to like pivot on a dime is super important. And it's something that I've had to do multiple times in my career, more than, all costume designers are good at that, but I've had a few incidents that have been even more so than your average. So and I just take it as a challenge as opposed to getting upset about it. So they were like, "Ooh, this might just work out." And the fantasy scenes really excite me because as much as we're in the hospital and I do try and vary the scrubs up and give people different looks and their own individual style as much as I can, you're still dealing with scrubs. So it's really fun to have these crazy, out of the ordinary, extraordinary, lovely fantasy sequences that come up almost every episode involving costumes. So I was actually super excited about that.
It's a funny sort of way, isn't it, that like how life kind of goes full circle a little bit, because you work with Sarah when you're so young to then reconnecting to then actually leading to something. Yeah, just again those sort of moments where you just think, wow, okay, cool, yeah, like let's roll with it. And then meeting with the crew and saying, oh yeah, how are you with last minute stuff? It's like, yeah, that's my middle name. It's like, I've been prepping for this all my career. I'm ready for it, not a problem. That must have been sort of like a nice feeling as well, knowing that like, yeah, I can easily step into this and do what I need to do. Which I think for a show like this where you're mentioning 5 days prep, 5 days shoot, I think it kind of makes sense with 5 days because each episode's about 25 minutes long, so that's like average 5 pages a day, which I don't know. It's sometimes depends on like the project. 5 pages does sound like a lot because I think I worked on one show. I think we did like 16 pages in one day or something, 13 to 16, and which I'm not sure how they managed to do it, but they figured it out somehow. Which again crazy to think that we were able to do that. But even when you're doing the prep for 5 days, like how do you as a costume designer get yourself in that mindset that you're shooting on the Monday but you need to prep for the next week, but you're sort of bouncing between the two? How do you split yourself physically, mentally, and creatively to be able to sort of be in the present but then also be in the future?
Yes, yes, and yes. It's an interesting question because yes, I'm in meetings prepping for something, and in that meeting I'm being texted about something that's going on set that they want to change, and I have to give my opinion on whether I want them to change or not. I look at all the background before they go to set, so they send me pictures all day long to get my approval before they send them off to set, even if it is just hospital scrubs and patients. So you do have both worlds happening at the same time. And I'm not sure if it's just because this is what I do for a living that I've gotten used to that, or I don't know that I could have done anything else for a living because I have to have that. I obviously, and I mean, my husband says this all the time when I'm at home and I'm not working. I've got like 12 things going on at the same time. I've got a puzzle over here and I'm doing Sudoku over there and I'm writing a new web page over here that will never go anywhere, but it gives me something to do because I am always busy, 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 busy. And as soon as I stop looking at one thing, I'm looking at something else. And it's just the way I've always worked. I may very well have ADHD, just not just undiagnosed, because of course I grew up in the 80s, and therefore this really works well for me because I've got multiple things happening at the same time. But I'm super, I have a creative side and then I have a really analytical side where I love lists and I love, checking off my tasks. And I have a to-do book that is handwritten and I write everything down that I need to do that day. And as I do them, I check them off. So I'm very type A that way. And I think that helps a lot because it keeps there's never any moment where, because 15 different things are going on, I'm kind of lost in la la land because I'm not sure where to go next. I very much have my list, and I know that if I can't deal with that and I can't deal with this, I at least have to do this. So it keeps me very structured and organized in a world of complete chaos.
I think we're quite similar in the way that we have certain things going, but for me, it's like more like books and films and like TV shows and like trying to consume art and media because there'll be so many. I've got a number of unfinished books because I'll start one, will not finish it because I'll go to something else because something else catches my eye and then go and sort of jump back and forth. And then there'll be stuff like looking at artist books where I'll pick up and look at a few sort of like paintings and then put it to the side because I'm like, yeah, okay, let's have a look at something else. And then it's like films, I'll start something. I will like I do watch films entirely, but sometimes I think when you start something and then you're just too tired, so then you're like, I'll come back to this later.
Yeah.
Usually it's stuff that I've seen before, so it's not like something new, so I wouldn't worry about that. But I think when you're sort of planning for productions and with what you're doing, from my experience, it's like, yeah, it's always just go, go, go. And I feel like, if you stop, then you kind of, it's like, what's it called? You just let the tidal wave take you out completely. Especially like when it comes to like the creative side, especially when if you're saying you're in a meeting going through like, oh, okay, so we're going to be doing this on this episode. And you kind of sneakily look at your phone to be like, yeah, this costume nailed it for this episode. So you're like, okay, they're filming with it. That's great. Or somebody's like, actually, somebody's done something and they split the trousers. Like, can someone fix it quickly? And it's like, oh man, like please,
Yes.
not be as bad as I think.
We had a button incident actually where buttons went popping off randomly, and there was three of us all had a button and we were all sewing the buttons on because we had to roll in like 3 minutes.
Yeah, and that's I can imagine the stress and pressure because of people being like, "Come on, we're about to go on. We need to do this. Time is money. We can't um like go over, or we can go over. We're all about to hit a meal penalty, so you need to make sure we're ready to roll. We need to do this. We need to find that." Yeah, it's yeah, it can be very stressful, and I don't really envy it.
There's some days set being on set, being the person who does the continuity on set, was I've done all the positions at least once, so I understand them and understand how they work within my department. Being the set supervisor on set is by far my least favorite. It's one of the more important positions because it makes the difference between whether they've walked onto set wearing the right earrings and whether their collar's the right way, and if the tie's tied exactly like it was last time, if they have their coat over their arm when really they walked in to the doorway from the other angle with it on, all of that stuff. That's what they're in charge of. But there's lulls where like nothing's happening on set. You're waiting for cast to come in, they're blocking, there's nothing you can do. But then when you're on, it's like, go, go, go now, let's have this. Oh my God, they burst a button and there you are, like in camera, like trying to get a button on their fly done. And then the adrenaline spikes and then you start to shake and then it looks like you're incompetent when really it's just that the adrenaline has spiked because you're trying to do it so fast. And oh my God, I absolutely, I just like that position. It is such an important position. And I have some great, amazing people I've worked with who just handle it beautifully. That is not a position that I was built for at all. So yes, the last minute and the crazy, especially what happens on set in those last 5 minutes just before you go to film, for costumes, hair, makeup specifically, because lighting has come in before that and camera's done their work before that. So it's that last 5 minute push is just, it's not where I like to find myself.
Yeah, well, I just find it can be chaotic and it can be. I know sometimes it's like just let someone do what they need to do and don't add more pressure to them, even though they are under loads of pressure to sort of just get on with it and do what they got to do. And people know what they need to do on set. I don't think you can dilly-dally, especially when it's only 5 days of shooting for an episode. But then again, people like to not, I wouldn't say pile on, but throw their weight around.
Yes.
There's something that you mentioned earlier, and I feel like you've been talking about the scrubs and how the costumes will look on scrubs and how you can change little bits and also probably add little features to like characters. So I can imagine that like something might be slightly out of place on one character because it might be slightly dysfunctional, or there's something that they might be a bit of a clean freak, so everything looks pristine. But what I'd love to talk about is the daydream sequences, because I feel like as a costume designer, they're probably a costume designer's dream, because you're jumping into so many different types of genres, so many different sort of styles. And I can imagine the early conversations are like, just go wild. This is what we have as an idea. And then you sort of build it around from that. I don't really know where to start in terms of the daydream sequences, because I think my favorite one is the ones with when you've got JD and the new Doctor arguing, and they're going to like sort of a James Bond-esque sequence with the tuxedos and the production design, and it's just like, oh, this is pretty cool. And this is the scrubs that we love. But then also you have the wrestling sequence where you've got everybody in their sort of fake jacked up muscle suits, but then also the announcers are in those sort of very extravagant purple suits, and then you've got the pit stop ones as well. And I'm sure I can keep going on and on, but where do these ideas come from? Because I can imagine that on the page, but you kind of want to add your own spin and you want to make it as fun as possible because it is comedy and light-hearted. And where do you begin with ideas and thinking about these sort of things, and how do you play off the comedy elements in the script, but also with the writers, but then also the actors and the fitting side of things?
Yeah, it is my favorite part of the show for sure, is the fantasy sequences. And as soon as we get a new script, the first thing we do is do a quick zoop, find the fantasies and see what it has to do with costumes, because usually we need to get on it right that second before we even finish reading the script. Case in point, we had to order in the tuxedo jackets for Park and for JD for the Bond, and trying to find, because we were making Park look like Oddjob, obviously from the Bond films, and Oddjob specifically wore the black pinstripe morning pants with that. So I don't know that you can tell when you see it, but we made sure that head to toe he looked as close as we could get to the Oddjob character. And then of course we needed JD to have the exact same outfit in that last sequence when they take poor Jacob's head off. And from the hats to the jackets to the pants, we had to order them in from a bunch of different places because we needed them fast and they needed to be accurate, and we didn't have time to make them. Over the course of the production, actually, we had JD's and Turk's and Elliot's sizes taken by a tailor, so that when something new came up, we could just call the tailor and go, okay, I need a 1940 suit. Oh, okay, I need a tuxedo, whatever it is, so that we could actually get it made. Because sometimes when you have access to the tailor, it's easier, faster, quicker to do that than trying to piece things from different places. So the James Bond sequence was oddly difficult because everything was coming from different places. The wrestling sequence, I was hugely concerned with. I was thinking it was going to be fake muscle suits, like just fabric muscle suits when I had first read it. And Zach and I crossed in the hallway this one day. He's like, I want silicone muscle suits. And I'm like, okay. So I had my assistant look for silicone muscle suits, which amazingly we found on Amazon. And in the meantime, I'm calling our local special effects guy where we would normally have them built. And I'm like, okay, so we have two characters that need to wear these muscle suits. I need to know, cost, obviously, but I also need to know lead time. And he's like 3 to 4 weeks. And I'm like, well, that's not going to work for our 5-day schedule. So my assistant ordered them in from Amazon. And they arrived and they were decent, but they were all like flat. So took them to set. They're super heavy. Took them to set, showed Zach, was talking to makeup, and we had a makeup effects person that we shipped them all off to color match them to both Donald and Zach's skin. And then they both had stunt doubles for that, obviously. So we had to get the suits painted. In the meantime, we're trying to find wrestling boots, and we're making the arm garters, and then we're making the capes that they wore, while also trying to put an outfit together for Elliot. And we wanted it to be in gold. And it's amazing when you start bringing pieces in that are gold, how none of the golds actually match. You're trying to put these things together, but you're doing it in like no time. I think that was the craziest part, like really what we managed to pull off we had a couple of extra days because it was over a long weekend. So we were able to get sort of 7 days prep for that. And we literally like stretched every day out, and then getting them in and out of the suits. They had to come to my fitting room. Normally they get dressed in the trucks, but like there was cornstarch. We use cornstarch instead of baby powder because it's healthier. There was cornstarch everywhere. I was like wearing my grubby, I'm gonna go gardening clothes. And it was a deal. Like it was 15 minutes to get each guy into their suit, and then another 15 minutes to get off. Zach actually had his assistant take a video of me and him trying to get out of just the top half, which I hope he posts because it was and some of it was like, I originally with that one had watched that original wrestling video from the OG Scrubs, and he was in red. So that kind of was the whole reason Zach's character ended up in red, because I wanted to do that callback to that. Of course, we had Elliot in her gold, and her cape we had made, and then I had my background, or my breakdown person glue all the sparkles on it by hand. And I have a great picture of her and her stunt double standing next to each other, and they look identical. It's great. And then the feelings police was another one. Oh my gosh, this is a great story, because we had got a brand new script half an hour before we walked into our first concept meeting for episode 1. And that new script had the feelings police in it, and they hadn't been in the previous one. So I'm like, oh, feelings police. Okay, what's that? So I walk into this concept meeting, and Zach is sitting at the table, and I've been thinking about it. And he turns to me for that scene, which is quite close to the beginning of it. And he's like, so what are we doing for feelings police? And I'm like, so imagine Chips, but fuzzy like a teddy bear. He's like, I love it. And that's how that one came about. And then we worked with art department to make us those wonderful flashes that's on the back of the suit. So everyone was just kind of like random. The pit stop crew we were lucky. It was just before Halloween, and there was a Spirit of Halloween close to us, and I had found those great suits. They all needed to be altered like crazy. Like none of them looked that good when you first put them on. And then we had art make us all the patches for them, but we didn't have time to get the patches properly printed, so they were literally stickers, and we just glued them with 777. But again, I had to have my breakdown person put them on and like measure them exact, because they all needed to be in the exact same spot. So that one was, again, super fast, on the fly. And we were just, we lucked out because it happened to be Halloween. Had it not been, we looked at paint suits, but they just looked cheap and plastic. So I'm not sure what we would have done.
There seems to be there's a lot I could take from your answer, because there's so much creativity that you could add to it, but then also you know, as much fun as these things sound, it sounds like there's a lot that goes into it, and you have to think about, you know, stuff like the suits. You know, the research for looking at like previous Bond villains. So, like as you said before, Odd Job is the you know, the pinstripe, and that you can also have a specific hat as well. So we need to make sure they have that, and then also because it's the suits need to be perfectly fitted, so you have to go to the tailor to get those measurements. And then, you know, what happens if the actors had a bad food weekend and the measurements are slightly off, so when it comes to set it doesn't look 100%. But then also, as you said, with the feelings police, how do you, what's the idea? And it's like, I kind of thought about it on the fly before being put on the spot, and it's like, yeah, I love it. There's so much, like, you basically get like the whole spectrum of really planned to then also being like, yeah, let's think about this now, and then like, oh yeah, we'll get away with it, and then sort of play it from there. And I think as well, like as a costume designer, this is probably like one of the best shows to be like showcase a show reel of like, this is what I can do, this is what we can come up with, and this is what we can play with. And even mentioning like the wrestling, that throwback to like, he wore red, so let's bring the red back. So that's like his iconic look sort of thing in air quotes. But then also the mentioning of like silicon, I was like, actually, I don't want to do it this way, let's do it that way. And thinking, well, how are we going to do that? And figuring out a way of doing it. Which again, I do feel for you because it must be so stressful. But then also so satisfying when you have nailed it.
It is a really good feeling when you walk on set and everything looks the way you imagined it was supposed to look in your head, and everybody is happy with how it turned out. Because there's, on almost every single one of those fantasy sequences, I can say somewhere in prep, there's a moment where you're like, oh my God, are we going to have clothes for these people in the time when we're supposed to film? Is it going to look good? Is it going to work? Are the silicone suits going to rip when we try and put them on? Are they going to pass out? Are they going to be able to move in them? Is the Bond look, are the jackets going to arrive in time? The, you know, the fluffy feelings police outfits, are we going to read that that's faux fur that he's wearing? And is everybody going to get that joke? We have another one coming up shortly, episode 104, where we needed to get two main characters built because we didn't have it. And the only place that I knew that we could get it built and to us in time, because everybody in town was working, was Thailand. So I'm on the phone at 9 o'clock my time PM, talking to them at like 7 in the morning their time, picking fabric over FaceTime and working out design ideas as I'm emailing them really, really quick sketches. And then then we're sending the measurements, and they're sending us looks back, and we're communicating, and they're sleeping when we're awake, and we're sleeping when they're awake. And so it's like end of day, beginning of day. And we managed to, and this is why I use them, because they've done it before, where they get it done really super fast and ship it to us super fast, and it arrived. And yes, both of them needed to have some alterations, but like minuscule little amounts. But there's that moment where you're like, and if these don't show up, what are we gonna do? What are these two people gonna wear? How are we gonna make this work? And then they showed up, and they ended up being gorgeous and beautiful and fantastic. And we did the little tweaks we needed to them, and onto camera they went. But it is, I think I gained some gray hairs for sure over the course of this season with some of the, oh my God, are we going to make it? Are we going to get it done? And oddly enough, somehow every time we had one of these big scenes, and I would go to the ADs and be like, can we put it near the end of the schedule, the shooting schedule, like on day 5? They'd be like, oh no, we're going to be shooting this on day 2 because, you know, actor availability, or we had to actually be on a location for something, which we don't do very often, or whatever. There was a myriad of reasons, and somehow the reasons always conspired against the costume department. And we were always, you know, most of the time stuck doing it on day 1 or 2. And we're like, oh my God. There was a lot of weekend work, actually. There were a lot of 6th and 7th days on this show, mostly because of getting the fantasy scenes ready.
I think as well, like, it would have been nice if somebody just did you a solid and were like, yeah, don't worry, we'll do this the last minute, don't worry, we'll do it the last day, and we'll get it all out of the way, not a problem. And it's like, nah.
I know. I think they did that for us once. Got it once.
You know what, at least once is better than none.
It's true.
But I guess also being able to work around it and think about, like, knowing that you need to get these ready, because you know that with the scrubs, you probably know that they're the meat and potatoes of the show, so you kind of have an idea of how they would work and how they look and how they might slightly change over the what's it called, over the series, because of ways that characters might behave or show certain signs of how they might be struggling, or how they might just not care, or maybe they just, I don't know, there's certain quirks that they might have about themselves. But then with, like, the daydream sequences,
Yeah.
not great. And then having to speak to people in a whole different continent, there must be a part of you where you're like, cool, by the time I wake up, you should be okay with our discussions. But if something goes wrong, I won't know until I wake up, and it might be a bit too late. So I can imagine that's probably slightly, you're tossing, turning, and then make you waking up at like 3 a.m, just being like, hey, just checking in, is everything okay?
It's a combo of doing that. There were a few times I did wake up, and then there's the other where I'm so exhausted by the time I go to bed that I just wake up. That helped. It was helpful because I didn't toss and turn all night a couple of times, just because by that point in time I was so exhausted I was just out. But there was one moment when I woke up and texted Thailand, and it was about 4 o'clock in the morning. Didn't really go back to sleep again after that. But they came through.
Well,
They came through with flying colors. So
I think as well, it's also probably quite great, like, as being able to work like with another country as well and collaborate with that. Even as scary as it is,
mm-hmm.
but being able to sort of not work there, but like work with them and gaining some sort of trust as well for them to sort of do stuff, and then also like vice versa.
And I was lucky. I had worked with them before on a few projects, and one Dead of Summer, which was like 2015 or 2016. It was a while ago. I had to do an 1800s costume for Tony Todd, who was a large man. And it literally was one of those things where they made it for us, and it arrived in our costume shop. We had time to open the box, hang it up. We were still steaming it when he walked in for his fitting, because they had only given us like 3 days when they cast him. So, and that's why I knew to go to them, because I knew that they could get it done fast and get it here, because they have like a little factory, and they have their workers on site, and they have a fabric on site, which is a huge deal, and they do period clothes all the time. So it wasn't out of their range. I'd use them for When Calls the Heart for some stuff, and I used them again in Firefly Lane. So I have used them a couple times, which is the only reason why I could sleep, because I knew that they, have that ability and are extremely talented and could get it done. Because not all even companies that work for film are not like, yes, we can have it to you in 2 days. these two full, complete period costumes, no problem. A lot of people would be like, no, can't do it. So,
I think there's just, again, another thing where it's just people sort of being like, yeah, don't worry, we've got you covered. Let's go in with it, and we should be all, all okay. And also the fact that like having that trust of people to just sort of get on with it and do it is, again, probably just like a massive weight off your shoulders, because you don't need to constantly check on someone and be like, oh, are you okay with this? Are you all right with it? And how are you getting on? Because again, that's not how somebody would be able to work as well.
it's true. I think that's one of the reasons why the fantasy sequences worked out so well for us, and part of why I was really able to take on the challenge of scrubs is I tend to be extremely decisive. So when I decide we're going with this look for a costume, I don't waffle. I don't change my mind. I don't hum and haw. It's just like, okay, this is what we're doing. We're going to do it. Does that mean that somebody who waffles and changes their mind and hums and haws does a better job with some things? Perhaps. Maybe there's more creativity at the end of the day with somebody who will go back and revisit things 12 times. And I appreciate that. That's a completely different way of working than the way I work. I have never been like that. I've always been like, sometimes, if I need to, I'll give somebody 3 options if that's what the producer needs to see. But very often I will just be like, this is what we're doing. Here's the look. And they go, great, because it's already underway. And though that may not work for, like I say, all producers and all studios and showrunners, in the case of something like Scrubs, where it's so fast and the turnaround is so quick, it is actually kind of perfect, because I don't second guess myself. Even maybe if I should, I don't. So it's just like, this is what we're doing, and we're doing it, and this is what color they're going to be in, and this is what color they're going to be in, and go.
Right, with the decisiveness, I think that's because you also know what you need to do, right? And it's not like in a bad way that, as you said, it's because you know you haven't got as much time as you might do on something else, and that's why you have that, basically get this gut feeling to be like, yep, this is what we'll look for, this is what we'll do, perfect, we'll move on to the next look, or actually we'll have these two lined up. I know some people say something, I know what someone is like with some of this stuff, so let's go with this thing, not a problem. And but then it also probably also comes down to, as yourself, is being able to communicate with people and probably getting a gauge of their like what they would like and what they sort of have in mind, and sort of playing on that. Maybe if that feels weird that you're like cheating by being able to, not cheating, but like tricking them a little bit, because you know what they like. So you're like, oh, let's push this idea, and because it might be slightly easier, but then at the same time, it's just, as you said, you're being decisive and efficient, and getting those ideas across, especially when you say 5 days prep, 5 days shoot. I keep thinking like rule of fives, but just thinking about that, and it's like, it's not a lot of time. And even though you could probably get through quite a lot in a day, it's probably thinking, yeah, I've done Monday, but it's like Tuesday now. What's going to happen on Tuesday? What happens if this is not open? Or, as you said, you're working through a holiday. So even though you might work on the Monday, supplier might not be open on that Monday. So then where do you go from there, and how do you sort of work your ideas into that as well?
Yeah, no, it's true. It's we've worked on many a Sunday, and because sometimes actors are coming in for fittings on a Sunday because they're working on the Monday, and they don't fly them in on Friday, just have them sit around for Saturday, Sunday to then work on Monday. They fly them in on Sunday. And we always have shoppers, hanging out just in case. but Sunday the stores close at 6. So sometimes, you just have to have everything there that you think you might need and cross your fingers and hope that it's going to work, because even if it doesn't work at 5:45 on Sunday, when you figure out that you need something extra, nobody's going to make it to the store in time. Or if they do, they'll still be trying it on that morning, Monday morning at 5:45 in their trailer, and you're hoping that it's going to work. So it's the foresight you have to sort of be prepared for all the what ifs, on top of just being very decisive and being like, we're doing this is how it's going to be, hope you like it. Off you go.
It's kind of, I guess, the cards that you've dealt with, and how you're sort of planning ahead as well, like as a department head. How do you plan ahead, and also just make sure that people are not left behind or grounding in what they're doing?
That's right.
Just to sort of jump onto the scrub sides of things, I guess, like, as a costume designer, you're going to be creating a lot of extras and multiples and duplicates of things, and also certain colors will signify certain departments. How did you go about creating some of these looks and sort of trying to emphasize, try to add a bit of character to them, so that it's not just somebody's uniform and sort of like their every day-to-day sort of usage of it all?
Yeah, no, it was an interesting thing, because there's actually quite a few different kinds of scrubs out there in the world, thank God. But trying to actually get them to us was challenging, because there was a time we had ordered some new scrubs for JD, and we ordered them in something like October. And I think and we paid expedited shipping, the whole thing, and we finally got them somewhere around mid-December. So when it comes to the scrub world, like, you can go, there's a few shops here in town where you can go and get some, but we've really discovered you need to do like your bulk buy at the beginning of the series. And if you're shopping in town, trying to find multiples is a thing. So we learned right off the bat, when we were getting new scrubs in, to order multiples at the same time, because there were a few times something would come up in the script, and sometimes they would change a gag, and they would change a gag a couple days before we go to camera, and so I'd have to change what somebody was wearing to work with this situation of, they're going to get coffee spilt on them or whatever it was. But so many of our characters, even our top 8, didn't have multis on their scrubs, because there was only one in the store that we could get in their size, and there was only one of this style, and there was a different pants, same brand but different style, so it didn't look the same. So it's amazing how challenging the whole scrub issue was. And then you're trying to make everybody different. Our medical interns obviously are in blues. Our surgical interns are in greens. And then Park and JD would wear grays and blacks as well, and navies, just to sort of differentiate them and elevate them a little bit from the medical interns. So, Park, who's super buff and really great shape, everything he wears is quite snug and likes to show off his physique. JD, he liked to just be, the cool medical guy. He didn't want to wear a lab coat because he wanted to be, of the people. So he was mostly in grays almost the entire time. We have our TikTok doc, Samantha Tosh, and I tried to put her in a different scrub almost every script day. There's a few that she wears a couple times because they were really cool and because you run out of scrub options. But we were going outside of the scrub worlds. We were going to Lululemon. We put her in some sort of sweatsuits because she gets free product. So the theory is different companies are sending this influencer new and innovative scrubs to wear to work. Of course, Dashana, it's all about the shoes. As we get into it, I mean, it's TV, so most of it's from here, but anytime you can see a wide shot of Dashana, she is she's got the Nikes. Her Nike collection rivals Turks, and both of them have the cool shoes. And then, you've got Amara, who's a little quieter, a little bit, she's had a sheltered life, but she still, obviously follows Tosh on Instagram. So she understands, putting a little bit of style into things, and she likes to wear her scrubs a little bit different. But yeah, it's really quite the thing trying to keep all of them separate. We put Blake in a lot of vests sort of to differentiate him. And Jacob's character, he would wear long sleeves all the time, and it kind of really worked because he's a little bit shyer. And the first thing he did when he got his long sleeves on was he sort of tucked his hands up in them, which kind of made him look younger and even more shy, and it really helped bring out his character like almost immediately. But it's been fun sort of pulling just different information from the scrubs and putting them into the characters. And I mean, Dashana, we change her earrings, and she's got like 12 between her 2 ears. We change her earrings all the time. We're always mixing them up and giving her different looks, and she wears the big earrings. And I mean, some of the stuff we do probably in a real hospital you wouldn't do, but there's that fine line between reality and television and making it still visually interesting for the people who are watching it. And everybody who's in the background, I look at everybody before they go on camera. So my background costumers will send me pictures of everybody before they go to set. So I'll be like, yes, no, hem those pants. That there's too many green. They're in the same green. They're not in enough blue, that kind of thing. So I look at everything before it goes to set.
It's interesting, there's little sort of tidbits for each person, and how I'm sure before when you get the scripts and you get an idea of it, you probably have an idea of things of like how you want to play them. So like the what's it called, like influencer, and what they're going to be wearing, because it's not necessarily, what they got given for free. Let's play with that idea. And then somebody's going to be more reserved. So how are we going to play it with that? Let's do this, and let's pull down their t-shirt so that they can hide their hands because they're just a little bit shy, and they want to hide that they're nervous as well, with the way that they're sort of using their hands. I think we all sort of might be guilty of that sometimes as well, because you don't want, especially if you're a doctor, people are looking for you for guidance, then it's like, what's wrong with me? And if you're nervous, it's probably not a great look, but you're somehow sort of pushing through and helping out.
It's all the little things that help my actors when they're on set, help them with bringing their character to life. Anything that I can do on my end that helps them, just makes it a fully functioning character at the end of the day that hopefully people will resonate with. Some of them they'll like, some of them they won't, but that's the point. You want variety.
Yeah, and you don't really want everybody looking the same, considering it could be, I don't want to say like, no, boring might be like slightly the wrong word to do it, but it's also, you need to sort of just add a bit of character and a fun to all of it, especially with just how things are with audience members, and also just how each person, you want to show their individuality to it all.
We actually had to start building some scrubs for Zach, because he really wanted to sort of keep within the grays and the gray blues, and trying to find, a variety for him got very difficult very fast, because there's just not a lot out there. And there were a few we found that weren't awesome. We don't want to put him in anything that's not awesome. So by about midway through the season, we actually started to build him some, and just finding the fabric was a challenge. But if there's a season 2, we're going to start the season off by getting some really nice technical fabrics and just building him a closet of grays and gray blues, denim colors. so that he started off on the right foot, so that we don't have to pull our hair out trying to find more, because sometimes they're just not out there. So
Yeah, and that's another thing, isn't it? Just like, what are you going to do if something's not out there or nothing's working and something, how do I need to pivot from this? But do I have enough to do it, or do I not have enough to do it? I guess I have to find out and see. And just want to hit you up with my final question. What was your favorite costume to design?
this is a spoiler, but there is a scene that comes up. I think it's 107. Hold on, I have my cheat sheet of which episode has what in it. It's 106. There is a fantasy scene that comes up in 106. Park is in it, and JD is in it. And it is a completely different style of costuming that was required for this because of what we did with the camera. And because of what we did with the camera, I couldn't look at fabric as I saw it. I had to put a special filter on my own phone and look at the fabrics I was considering for each costume through a special filter, and then look at the patterns and the textures and see how they popped or didn't pop, and mix stripes. We had those costumes built. There's 3. There's the 2 gentlemen and a lady. And we had them built for this one fantasy sequence. But it was really interesting because it was learning how this specific camera filter changed textures and colors and how to make things pop so that they didn't all bleed together, because things you wouldn't expect would look the same under this filter, and things that you would never have considered were the ones that actually popped out. So there was quite a lot of time and care taken just to picking the fabrics before the outfits were built. And we had the 2 outfits for the gentleman done by a tailor in town, and then the outfit for Our Lady was done by a cutter and a stitcher in town, who both did an amazing job. And then hair makeup came in, and they just coiffed them and completed the picture. And it's probably my favorite. And I don't think I gave anything away in that little blurb.
No, I think you're okay. I think you're safe. I don't really want to ask too many follow-ups on it, so I'm just gonna play it cool and say solid choice. We'll let the audience have a look at it later on and let them enjoy it.
Yes.
So I think we're all in the clear, and we're not, and no one's in trouble. Alisa, thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you. It's been so much fun.
Scrubs revival / reboot / return is streaming now on Hulu. Go out and see Alisa and her team's excellent work. Thank you again.
Thank you. Have a wonderful day.
You too. You take care, and bye-bye now.
Thank you for listening. Please subscribe, rate, and review this podcast.